There is one way to start with nothing and end up with a trained Lora of a character we created completely from scratch. I will divide this process in 3 parts and guide you through them. The problem with AI-generated characters is that they are non-reusable. The moment you click Generate again, the character is gone. Forever. Unless you use already established names like Michael Jackson or use a trained Lora or embedding, no matter how good your definition of this character is, it will get lost. People did find a way to create the same character in different poses though. Using a character turner embedding, you can make a turnaround of the same character. Or if you want more specific poses, you can use ControlNet with duplicate OpenPose rigs. Then, Stable Diffusion will try to generate the same character in all of those. This might already be enough if you're making a game that only uses like 3 or 4 poses of the same character for animation. But we are going deeper. This will be the first step of our process, creating a nice and clean character sheet. You can use the embedding I talked about before, but I didn't see much difference when not using it. What I will use is this preset of OpenPose rigs that I made in Photoshop. For the main turnaround I used a reference from CBTI, and for the smaller poses I went to Pose My Art and extracted them directly from there. You can create your own if you want, or use the ones that I will leave in the description. I will talk about this more later, but for now we are looking to use this space as efficiently as possible, with variation in sizes, mixed headshots and full body shots, as well as dynamic and static poses. I will also make 2 very similar variations that change just a few poses. We want to create a spreadsheet that has a lot of variation while keeping enough quality per pose, so don't go too small. And with this made, we can finally start with Stable Diffusion. The character I will create with you in this tutorial will be a woman wearing a kimono with pink hair and blue eyes, even though I will show you that it can be done with other characters and styles for those of you who are tired of anime. Input your OpenPose sheet into ControlNet using no preprocessor, and with ControlNet is more important as our control mode. We are looking for a clean character sheet with a white background. Try using a high image quality. The max size will probably be 1024. And iterate using different prompts and different models. You can also play around with the CFG scale if you feel like your prompt is getting ignored. My final prompt was white background, character sheet, 1 woman, break, pink hair, break, blue eyes, kimono, long sleeves, medium length hair, and high detail. When you find a character sheet that you like, freeze the seed and activate high-res fix to upscale the result even further. Of course, using the same width and height you originally had. Then activate high-res at per 2, even though you can use more if you want, and use your preferred upscaler. In my experience, the best ones are 4x Ultra Sharp or Langzos. That allowed me to create a good enough image in my experiments, like this one for the king character and this other one for the realistic character sheet, and these are the prompts I use in each case. You may already know where we are going with this. Our goal is to create a dataset from this one image and then train a Lora with it. Keep watching though, even if you already know how to do this, I will provide with some cool tricks that will help you in every step of the way. For example, when you find a character that you like and want to continue with it, like this image, activate the extras checkbox next to your recycle seed button. Then increase the batch count to something that you're comfortable with. 2 is usually enough. This will allow us to make variations of the image. Use it at a very low strength so it doesn't change the whole character. In my experience, the best parameters are about 0.15 to 0.3, making me these variations of the same character. And the reason we do this is to make our cleanup job easier, but more on that in a second. If you aren't getting a white background, no matter how hard you try, and even trying different models, then you will probably have to use image to image. Use a reference with a white background like the one I will leave in the description, and then also use the ControlNet model as we were doing before and prompt normally. Use a denoising strength of 1. This should do the trick even if your result has now less definition. You can also try to inpaint more poses into your spreadsheet, but it is usually pretty hard to get good results. And now that we found a base image that we like and created some variations using the extras option, we can try to create some new poses. This isn't easy to get right, but trying can be worth it if your initial images weren't super perfect and some poses got lost, like this one's in my case. What I will do is use the image we created and add it to ControlNet in reference-only mode, lowering the weight a little bit. Then change the first OpenPose sheet that we had for reference, adding a new one with a little variation. In my case, I only changed the small poses a little bit. Generate again with the same prompt and, if possible, seed. Even if some part of the characters get lost, we will have some new references that we can use. And with this done, it's time for cleanup and some retouching. Keep in mind that for the king, for example, I did absolutely nothing, so there is no need to overcomplicate stuff. It will highly depend on how important the result is for you. For example, if you're making a comic and this is a character that will only appear in a few vignettes, you can just create the OpenPose references with the poses you will need and then generate until you find a fitting character. And there you go, from this you can just cut it out and put it in there. However, if you care a lot about the character, then import everything we made until now into a photo editing software. The first thing we want to do is look at which images have the most consistency in characters and what poses are the easiest to read. For example, in my case, after looking at the images I had, I really liked the lighter blue tone on this sheet. I'm going to use it as a base and then replace some poses that might be or too repetitive or hard to understand. So I will take the full close-up portrait and I will change this profile pose for a sitting one. I'll change this weird T-pose for the one with hands in her face, and I will also use the full body shot of her from behind. And now I'm going to retouch this image to get as much consistency as I want or need, starting with the most obvious miss the AI made, the kimono on the one girl looking back. For this I'm just gonna grab the colors they had and paint them in, without many concern for shadows or light. Next, I'll erase the parts that aren't the main character, like this back thingy or these other floating parts. There is also some stuff that isn't the same in all generations. For example, most backshots don't have this broom looking stuff, so I'll take one and paste it over and over again on the places that need them, maybe deforming some to give a little motion to the poses. I like this ribbon more than the one in the turnaround, so I'm taking it and repasting it all around. You can also add stuff too. Since the character is very standard right now, I'd like it to have some kind of ornament on the kimono. So I just painted some fast scribbles and copied and pasted them in each pose, making sure that they were on the same spot every time, of course. Something else you can do here is change the colors. Let's say I didn't want the kimono to be blue. I can take the hue layer, then click on the color blue, and change the hue to something that matches the color I want most. In this case, I'll leave it blue. I'm just going to lighten the poses that feel a little darker than the others. There is no need for you to do all of this. Do it just for the parts that you feel are important for the character, because you could stay here all day if you wanted to. Just make sure to not overdo it though, like with details, because some things might get lost in the next step. For the realistic style image I'm making, I just added the two variations together and fixed the back. The main image had some golden parts in a few poses, so I used the second image to remove them. Could also just have painted them out, of course, like I did with the forearms that had the same problem. Now we move on to upscaling, and this can get a little tough. These are the usual parameters that I use in case you are interested. Using image to image, open ControlNet and input the image you want to upscale, the same image that you have in the image to image tab. Use the tile resample model and change ControlNet to ControlNet is more important. Then I also use Ultimate as the upscale, leaving pretty much everything the same except for changing the upscaler to 4x ultra sharp, of course you can use another one if you want, and using padding pixels of 42 with seam fix activated. That is what I used in the King generation and it went pretty okay. Some messed up faces here and there, but that's fine. And I also used this for the realistic generation, even though I used none as an upscaler, but not for any particular reason, just because I forgot. The first upscale I did for the anime chick was alright, but it had a lot of artifacts and the eyes were a little bit off. You could clean this up and just inpaint the eyes again, but I tried re-upscaling, this time using a different upscaler, 4x ultra sharp, not having clip skip and activating after detailers so it could auto-detect the faces and change them for this prompt. Also lowered the denoising strength to 0.34 and made the image get upscaled directly to 4096. Make sure to upscale this from an original image that was already pretty big. In my case, since I already upscaled by 2 using high res, my image is about 1500. Point being that it might take some attempts to get the right upscale, so experiment. And also, nothing stops you from just upscaling more than once and compose the best parts of each one together. Sometimes I upscale once for details using a high denoising strength like 0.6 and another one at 0.3 just in case there are some parts that the first upscale messes up. If you already have the upscaled version, you can start creating the regularization images. These are, in short, references that we will use to train our model and give it more flexibility. I wouldn't have even known about this if it weren't for the help I got from
Le Fourbe.
on Discord, but more on that later. This is an optional step, but can help you give your characters more flexibility on the final Lora. We want images of this same character class. So in my case, it would be woman for the anime one and man for the realistic one. In my case, I used cyborg, for a reason that you will see later. The aim is to create variations of the class, in different poses, angles, expression, light setups, etc. To optimize our time the most, we can do the following. We will use an extension called Dynamic Prompts. I'll make a video on it eventually, but it is very good for things like this. You can install it from the Availables tab. For now, we will just use the function that allows you to create a list of concepts, and then let the generation choose one of them in every different batch you have. You will need a text file ordered in this format. I will give you some files you can use for this purpose without having to re-prompt every single generation. Just get the files and move them to extensions, dynamic prompts, and wildcards. I will leave one for camera angles and one for character orientation, and then prepare 3 prompts: full body dynamic poses, face close-ups, and upper body shots. Don't use enhancers like high detail or anything overcomplicated. We want the images to be as simple as possible, just focusing on the main class. If you, for whatever reason, still have a lot of details in your image, you can use the add detailer Lora at negative value like -1, and that should take care of the issue. And of course, thanks again for the tip. We will be using the prompts from text file script. Now get your prompts here and type this gamer tag looking format. Open 2 weird brackets, type 1 and 2 freedom signs. Then use the underscores, the name of the file that you're referring to, in this case camera view, and then 2 more underscores and close the weird brackets. Put that in each prompt and also add the orientation one if you want. Do it however you like the most. Also activate the iterate seed every time option. Calculate a total of about 60 images. Make sure to use batch count and not batch size. This will avoid bleeding. I make these images 1024 by 1024, but kind of depends on your PC. If you want to make them 512 by 512, that's fine too. Don't worry about it taking some time, because this will be running in the background while we work on the next step, preparing a dataset. We will take our upscaled image, clean the parts that we need to fix up, and then separate it into different images to create a dataset that will be used to train a Lora. So let's get to it. This is the dataset I created for my previous character. It was a total of 15 images and I didn't use all the poses. Also, most of these images aren't clean at all. The most cleanup I did was in painting the faces that looked really bad, just prompting something similar to what I needed. Something that I haven't tried but could work is using the deepfake extension Roop, using the close-up portrait image on the spreadsheet as a reference, to make sure it's the same character. Did clean up some parts though, even though nothing crazy. The first step is cleaning the parts that broke with the upscale, mixing the best parts of each upscale if you have more than one, as well as fixing some details. In this case, I had to add the broom looking stuff in some parts of the image that I forgot to add before upscaling, but that's fine. I also repainted some parts by either copying and pasting from other poses or just painting normally with the brush. The final result I got from the anime image is this, and that was pretty fast, so now I'm going to separate each pose into a new image to populate our dataset. I just masked every single pose one by one, creating a copy of the original image. It is a tedious process but really worth it. It is faster to do than it looks. Now, it is very important to separate the main turnaround like I'm doing here. I will only take 2 of the full bodies as a single image, the one on the left and the one from behind. The front and profile views I will divide into 5 different images. One for the main core of the body, without the head and up to the hands. I will do this for both the profile and front view. I will also cut the front and profile view of the legs, and lastly, I will also take the profile picture of the head. Won't do the same for the front view head, because we already have a larger pose right here. Then just separate the rest of the poses normally, fixing the artifacts that might appear on them. I just use the healing brush or paint over it. Also, if there are other character parts in the cutouts, erase them with the mask or painting them with white. And now we have a layer with each and every one of the poses from the original image. The next step will be to create images from these cutouts. The big poses with more resolution I'll leave with a white background, into a 1024 by 1024 file, and exporting them normally as PNG. Then the full body turnaround cutouts I'll export them with white background as well, but this time in a format where the whole body fits without having to downscale it too much or at all. Finally, I'll make a quick composition for each and every one of the rest of the poses. This step is kind of optional depending on how good of a result you want. You could do this with just a white background or with a poor Photoshop version, but I wouldn't recommend it. But I do like putting some effort into this, so they look like images that we're taking on a real setting. This will avoid having issues with white lines surrounding your character later on, or even the character feeling out of touch with the background. For this, I just import the base cutout into a 1024 by 1024 file, then take out the white background, and using Stable Diffusion, I generate a possible setting for the pose I'm looking at, be it a dance floor, a landscape, or some concrete wall. I don't really care that much. Just something quick that kind of makes sense. The only important part here is that the character doesn't get lost and the shape is well seen. If you don't know if it is, then look at the image from further away and try to see your character. It should be easy to spot. It is very interesting to have different lights affecting your character, and for this I go to Clip Drop Relight. Here you can import an image and relight it as you want. It does a good enough job and it is really fast to do. Just try that the lights match the colors of the background. This next step I do is completely extra, but like always it helps. To add more clarity on what the main character is, I like to blur the backgrounds a little bit. Some I blur a lot, some I don't whatsoever. Also, I add the reflection of the colors from the environment. This is very fast to do and helps with overall cohesiveness. But honestly, do what you feel looks best. These are the OmegaSat examples I made for the realistic version. I'm kind of using this as a stress test to see what results you can get if you're not putting any effort into the process. For better results, I'd recommend either upscaling the faces again or spending more time in cleanup. These are the kinda sad examples I made for the king. And these are the sure examples I made for the anime version. The anime is the one that took the most time, with about 1 hour for the full dataset preparation. Something important to know is that you can create these datasets however you want. You can, for example, use Midjourney to create character sheets that aren't so human or that are more stylized, and if you know how to draw, you could draw them by hand or even posing a 3D character in different poses. This is just a quick template that I made and that worked for me, but it isn't a rule on how to make your images and has a lot of room to be optimized. So, as long as you end up with a consistent dataset like this one, you will be able to train AI with your own characters. Like we're about to do, because our job here isn't done yet. It is time to train a Lora model so we can put this character into any pose and any setting we want. This will be the final steps to make our character a reality. You will need KohyaSS, but I'm not going to go about how to install it in this video, because if you don't already have it, then you probably need to watch this video first. There I explain how to install it and how to use it. Also following this dataset with a slower pace and more detailed explanation, so you are not missing anything. You can kind of think of this as a second part of this tutorial. Before leaving, please watch the end of this video first, because I have something very important that I would really like you to know. See you there. For those that already know how this goes, let's speed up. Starting with renaming. Put all your images that will be used for training into a single folder. Then select all of them and rename them to whatever you want, but make sure all of them have the same name and format, so PNG, JPG or JPEG, but just one of them. You can also make another one for the regularization images, like this. Now that we have our images sorted, we can caption them, aka describe them with tags. If you are using a realistic model, then caption using the clip format, which is with a little more fluent language. We are tagging for anime, so we will use the dboru format, which is separating everything by commas. I will use an application called dboru tag manager or something like that. Not necessary, but really nice to have. I'll leave the link in the description just in case. First I will auto caption everything in the folder and then clean it up. Without getting into the details, find a name for the character you want to make, and it will act as a keyword to trigger your Lora. Then we want to describe everything that isn't part of our character. Using the king's images as an example, the character name is KGNN4T. So in a white background image, there is only a white background and our character. If you think the crown forms part of the character, don't add it in the tags. But if you think it is an accessory that can be detached from it, then tag. So tag everything that you want to be able to change later on. In my case, I will just separate the crown. Knowing that, I took all the tags describing my character that the auto captioning made, and I will add scary as the keyword. It is very important to add your keyword at the beginning of each caption, for something that we will see in a second. Another important thing is adding the word cropped on the images that are just part of a body, like these ones here, where you don't see the full character. Once you have added it to one, it will appear on the right. The next time you need to add it, just double click this one and it will be inserted automatically. This step is the same for the images that are on the realistic style. The only thing that changes is that you will use the KohyaSS clip auto captioning, and then you will try to use a more natural language style of describing. Don't worry too much though. The next step is creating the folder setup for the training. In Kohya, I'll go to Dream Booth Lora, then click on Tools and Folder Preparation. Add the Training Images folders path as well as the path for the regularization images, if you have them. of course. For repeats, I'll use 40 on the dataset and 1 on the regularization. Now hit create and copy to folders tab. This will make the folders needed for training as well as copying the info into the training tab. Unless you're like me and don't realize that you're not in the Dreambooth Lora section and you'll have to input them manually. Here we will choose what model we train the character on. It should be one that is either the same one you used for creating the character or one that generates the same style. In my case, I used Counterfeit to make the base image. It is anime style, so the model I got recommended for training is any Lora. I'm gonna use that one. For the realistic one, I will use Edge of Realism or realistic version. If you are in doubt, you can always use the base Stable Diffusion 1.5 model. Now for the training parameters, I changed just a few things. Haven't experimented with creating Loha or Locon, so maybe you have better luck trying those, but I wouldn't recommend for Lora beginners like me. I'll just use standard. As captions extension, I'll put .txt as that is what my caption files are. You could use a fixed seed if you want, but I won't for now. For training batch size, it comes down to how many batches your PC can handle. For me, it will be 4 at a time, so let's leave it at that. This will make the training way faster. As far as epochs go, I put 5, because that's what it usually took for the AI to understand my character. More than that, it was usually overtrained, and lower than that, it was undertrained. It will of course depend on your training. Uses BF16 here, but I can't cause it crashes, so I'll use FP16, which is also okay. I tried Adam W and Lion, even though none of them at 8-bit because they crash for me. But you can try them though, they are supposed to be good. For ADAMW, I left everything as it was. This is the optimizer that got me the best consistency, even with using ControlNet. The LR scheduler I left as it is and changed it to 5% warm-up. Most guides online tend to change the LR scheduler to constant and 5% warm-up, so you can try that too. I got better results like this though. From here, I'll just change the network rank to 64 and network alpha should be half of that, so 32. For max resolution, you can use 512 by 512 and it will be enough, no need to go 768. Enable buckets as we have images that aren't square and that pass the max resolution. For the advanced configuration, I will activate gradient checkpointing. It is supposed to make the training faster. Also activate shuffle caption, but remember putting keep tokens at 1, so the keyword that we put at the beginning, in my case scary, stays always there. For the captioning length, you can let it be, unless you have some really long captions. Then use clip skip 2 when training an anime model, and if it is realistic, then leave it at 1. And finally, we will use another hack the wise one told me, using the sample images config. I will put 40 in sample every n steps. I'll use the prompt scary, one girl, solo, standing, looking at viewer. You can add the negative prompt if you want, with double dash and then prompting. This will make an image every 40 steps, so we can see what is going on and where the training is at. Go on models folder, then samples, and here we can see what the model is learning. Of course the first images will be very bad, but the idea is that it improves little by little over time. If it finishes and you like where it's going, but you think it is undertrained, you can import the last Lora you made in here, and use it as a base to train upon. Every dataset will have some variations on the settings, but if you have a dataset like mine, then you will 100% be able to train your character, even if not at first try. In my case, I asked for help with all this training stuff, as he knows a lot about Lora training and he carried me through this whole process, basically flexing on me with his results being perfect at the first try and mine being trash. He was absolutely necessary on this final part, because he knows what makes a good dataset and how to train it properly, so I really wanted to thank him. I think it is very important to tell you that I don't know everything about anything, so having people like him that are willing to share their knowledge is super important, and for that very reason I created a place where we can all help each other and share what we learn. I'm really happy to announce that we now have a Discord server, where you can find the wise ones like and even become one of them yourself. I actually created a section dedicated only to this character creation problem, where we can experiment together to find the perfect solution. I will make sections for very popular AI problems that haven't been solved yet. So if you're interested in advancements on this topic or other AI related stuff, make sure to get in and learn with everyone in this super cool community. As you can see, the results were pretty nice, fairly consistent and flexible. I tested it with prompts the wise one used, which are the ones that you see on screen. They are really nice to see flexibility in facial expressions and poses, as well as settings and angles. Overall, it works better than what I actually anticipated, keeping in mind that we created this from one single image. Of course, this is a very simple character. The more complex and detailed yours is, the harder it will get. There is a very interesting idea that was presented to me by the wise one, which is to retrain again using the new generated images to improve your Lora infinitely, choose the best results, and add them to your dataset. From here, you can retrain your Lora from scratch or work upon the one you had. Also, if you want to switch styles, for example the realistic model, you can generate with a higher Lora value, like in this case 1.2. Then I inpainted using original and a low denoising strength, and now we have our trained character on a realistic style. We can do this over and over again to prepare a super flexible and precise dataset. Keep in mind though that, like everything AI related, Loras have their own limitations. It will be extremely difficult to have asymmetry as well as complex patterns. Of course, the more you work on it, the better chances you will have, but there are some things that at the moment are pretty much impossible even with infinite images. In contrast with the realistic model, I made the absolute worst possible dataset. Bad upscale, bad faces, no cleanup, bad subject separation, and random image matching that has no coherence with the character and no sense of scale or depth. To make it even worse, for the captioning, I only used auto caption and just cleaned up the blue and orange texts, adding the keyword, of course. Oh yeah, and really bad regularization images. So being the laziest you can be preparing the dataset and doing a pretty bad training job, you could end up with a Lora with this level. It is pretty bad, but what did you expect? Of course, the better you are at training stuff, the better your Lora could be. I'm pretty sure that could train a pretty decent Lora even with this dataset. But as I said, everything has its limits. Creating a non-humanoid spreadsheet is very hard, as well as having accurate descriptions or even characters that use items or have assets with them. This method is no more than a prototype idea to solve the character consistency challenge. It still has a lot of room for improvement. For example, we could find what's the optimal number of images to train a Lora with, as well as what types of variations and poses are the best. Then we could focus on optimizing the spreadsheet for that, getting a perfect combination of images that are the best for training and that at the same time allow AI to create the same character consistently when creating the basic spreadsheet. The prompt also needs some work, as well as we could find what are the best models for this. The dream option would be to have a ControlNet model trained so that you input a character and then it allows it to use it with other poses, expressions and whatever. But training a ControlNet model is incredibly hard and it needs a very large dataset. Maybe finding a more optimized way to train a Lora is the easiest option, but I'm sure that with time and sharing information, we will find a way. For now, this is the idea I'm presenting for this challenge. I would love to see what your results are, as well as your ideas and propositions. So if you find this video useful in any way, please subscribe. Hope to see you in the Discord, and thank you for watching.